At my sister's baby shower, everyone laughed behind my back, said I'd never understand what real family means. I left without saying a word. 3 weeks later, they got an eviction notice and realized who'd been covering the bills all along. I, 32M, stood in the corner of the community hall, watching pastel balloons bob against the ceiling while my sister opened her 7th or 8th gift. The room buzzed with laughter and congratulations, and I nursed a warm ginger ale that had lost its fizz an hour ago. Nobody had spoken to me in 45 minutes. My sister sat in the decorated chair at the center of attention, her hands resting on her belly, while our mother fussed over her like she was made of porcelain. Our other sister helped arrange the gifts into neat piles, occasionally glancing my way with something that looked like pity. Or maybe it was discomfort. I had stopped trying to interpret their expressions years ago. The thing about being the family ATM is that people forget you have feelings until the money stops flowing. They remember you exist when rent is due, or when the car breaks down, or when someone needs their credit card paid off. But at gatherings like this, I became furniture. Useful furniture that quietly existed in the background. I had arrived with an expensive stroller system that took me 2 hours to research and another 30 minutes to wrap. My sister barely looked at the card. She thanked me in the same tone someone might thank a waiter for refilling their water glass, then immediately turned to coo over the handmade blanket from our aunt. The blanket probably cost $15 in yarn. My gift had cost $900. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was being petty for keeping score. But watching her genuinely light up over everyone else's tokens while treating mine like an obligation started wearing on something deep in my chest. My cousin approached the gift table and picked up something small, turning it over in her hands. She called out to the room, asking whose gift it was. Someone said it was from me. My cousin made a face, the kind people make when they smell something slightly off, and said something to our aunt. They both laughed. Not cruel laughter exactly, but dismissive. The kind that says this is exactly what we expected from him. Our mother joined them, and I watched her mouth move as she gestured vaguely in my direction. The three of them shared that knowing look that women sometimes share when they think they understand something men never will. More laughter rippled through their corner. My brother-in-law stood near the food table, loading his plate for the second time. He caught my eye and smirked before turning back to his friends. He said something I couldn't quite hear, but I caught the words "doesn't get it" and "never will." His buddies chuckled, and one of them glanced at me with something between amusement and contempt. The real knife came from my mother. She was holding court near the cake, surrounded by relatives I saw maybe twice a year. Her voice carried across the room when she wanted it to, and apparently she wanted it to now. She was explaining something about family, about what it really means to understand sacrifice and love. She said some people think family is about showing up with expensive things, but real family is about understanding what matters. Real family is about connection and shared experience. She said some people would never understand what real family means because they are too focused on themselves, too disconnected from what actually matters. She didn't say my name, but everyone knew. A few heads turned my way. Someone nodded in agreement. My sister touched her belly and said something about hoping her child would understand the importance of real connection, unlike some people. The laughter that followed felt like static in my ears. It wasn't even angry laughter or mocking laughter. It was casual, easy laughter. The kind that happens when everyone agrees on something so obvious it barely needs saying. I was the punchline to a joke I hadn't realized they were all telling. I set my cup down on the nearest table and walked toward the exit. Nobody called after me. Nobody asked where I was going. I pushed through the door and stood in the parking lot, letting the cool air hit my face while I steadied my breathing. For 10 years, I had been the solution to every family crisis. When our father died and left behind a mess of medical debt, I paid it off. When my older sister's husband lost his job, I covered their mortgage for 8 months. When mom's car died, I bought her a new one. When my younger sister wanted a wedding she couldn't afford, I wrote a check that cleaned out my savings. I never asked for gratitude. I told myself I did it because that is what family does. But standing in that parking lot, I realized they had never once asked if I needed anything. They had never checked if I was okay. They just expected me to be there, wallet open, mouth shut, grateful for the privilege of being useful. I drove home and sat at my kitchen table for a long time. The house was quiet. I had bought it 3 years ago, a simple 2-bedroom place that suited me fine. No wife, no kids, Just me and a job that paid well enough to support not just myself, but apparently 3 other households. The next morning, I logged into my bank account and started going through my automatic payments. The first one I found was my mother's rent. I had been paying it for 6 years, ever since she claimed she couldn't afford her apartment on Social Security alone. The second was my older sister's mortgage, the one I had taken over during that rough patch that somehow never ended. The third was the car payment for my younger sister, the pregnant one, because her husband's credit was apparently too damaged to get approved. I stared at the numbers. Over the past decade, I had given them close to $300,000. Some in loans that were never repaid, most in gifts that were never acknowledged. All of it taken for granted. I canceled every automatic payment. Every single one. Then I sent a brief email to each of them explaining that due to personal financial planning, I would no longer be able to provide financial assistance. I kept it polite and vague. I didn't mention the baby shower. I didn't mention the laughter. I just said my circumstances had changed and I needed to prioritize my own future. My mother called within an hour. I didn't answer. My older sister texted asking if this was a joke. I didn't respond. My younger sister left a voicemail saying she didn't understand what I meant and could I please call her back. I deleted it. The first few days were strange. I kept expecting to feel guilty. I kept waiting for the regret to hit. Instead, I felt lighter. I went to work, came home, cooked myself dinner, and went to bed without my phone buzzing every 5 minutes with some new crisis that required my wallet. Week 2 brought more calls. My mother left a message saying her rent was due and she needed to know when I was sending the payment. My older sister sent a long text about how she had been counting on me, and this was really bad timing. My younger sister's husband called and actually had the nerve to say I was being selfish, that family helps family, and what kind of brother abandons his pregnant sister. I listened to that voicemail 3 times, marveling at the audacity. This was the same man who spent every Sunday watching football and complaining about his life, while I quietly funded it. The same man who smirked at me during the baby shower while eating food I indirectly paid for. By week 3, the tone changed. My mother showed up at my door, her face tight with stress. She said she had gotten an eviction notice. She said she didn't understand why I was doing this. She said she needed help, that she was my mother and I owed her that much. I stood in my doorway and looked at this woman who had raised me, who had also spent a decade treating me like an ATM with legs. I asked her if she remembered the baby shower. She looked confused. I asked her if she remembered what she said about real family and understanding what matters. She started to respond, but I could see in her eyes that she didn't actually remember. It had been such a casual cruelty that it hadn't even registered as significant. I told her I couldn't help her anymore. I told her she would need to figure something out on her own, the way adults do. She started crying, saying I was abandoning her, that I was cruel, that I was punishing her for something she didn't even understand. Maybe I was cruel, but I was also done. My older sister called me a day later, panicking about her own mortgage. The bank had sent a notice about the missed payment. She was crying, saying she had 3 kids, and how could I do this to them? I reminded her that her husband had a job, that they had simply gotten comfortable with me subsidizing their lifestyle. She said I was being vindictive and petty. I hung up. My younger sister sent a message through our cousin, saying she had always thought I was different, that she had defended me to others, that she couldn't believe I would do this right before her baby arrived. The message made me laugh. She had defended me. How generous. How noble of her to defend the family bank account. The messages and calls eventually slowed down. I heard through our aunt that my mother found a cheaper apartment, that my older sister's husband finally picked up extra shifts, that my younger sister moved in with her in-laws temporarily. Everyone survived. Shockingly, the world didn't end just because I stopped paying for everything. Update 1. A month after everything fell apart, my older sister showed up at my house. She looked exhausted, older somehow. She asked if we could talk, and I let her in because some part of me, the part that still remembered being kids together, couldn't leave her standing on the porch. She sat on my couch and told me everything had been really hard. She said they almost lost the house. She said her husband had to get a second job and she had to go back to work part-time. She said it wasn't fair of me to cut them off without warning. I asked her if she thought it was fair that I spent 10 years funding everyone's life while they laughed at me behind my back. She went quiet. I asked her if she remembered the baby shower, if she remembered standing with Mom and our cousin, laughing about how I didn't understand real family. She said she didn't remember that specifically, but if it happened, she was sorry. She said it probably wasn't about me. She said I was being too sensitive, that family teases each other, that I should know they didn't mean anything by it. That word, sensitive. As if noticing that your family treats you like garbage is a character flaw. I told her I wasn't angry anymore. I told her I was just done being the solution to everyone's problems while being treated like I was the problem. She cried and said she didn't realize I felt that way, that I should have said something sooner, that I never told anyone I was struggling. I hadn't been struggling financially. I had been struggling with being invisible unless I was useful. But trying to explain that to someone who had never experienced it felt pointless. She left without resolution. No apology that felt real, no acknowledgement that actually landed. Just more explanations about why I should understand, why I should forgive, why I should come back and make everything easier again. Update 2. 2 months in, my younger sister had her baby. Our aunt sent me a photo and a pointed message about how family should be there for important moments. I looked at the photo of my sister holding her daughter and felt nothing. No anger, no guilt, no longing. Just a distant recognition that this person and I shared DNA and not much else. My mother sent a handwritten letter. She said she had been thinking about everything and she understood why I was hurt. She said she never meant to make me feel unappreciated. She said she hoped I could forgive her and come back to the family because the baby needed her uncle. The baby needed her uncle. Not, I need my son, or I miss you, or I realize I treated you poorly. The baby needed me. Translation: they needed my money again and were trying a different angle. I didn't respond to the letter. My brother-in-law, the one who had smirked at me during the shower, actually texted me. He said he understood I was upset, but I was being dramatic. He said men don't hold grudges like this. He said real men take care of their families even when it's hard, even when they don't get thanked for it. I blocked his number. The irony of a man who let another man pay his bills for years lecturing me about being a real man was almost funny. Almost. Update 3. For months after I cut everyone off, things got interesting. My older sister's husband reached out through my work email, which took effort to find. He said he wanted to apologize man to man. He said he had never realized how much I had done for them because my sister had downplayed it. He said he felt ashamed and wanted to make it right. We met for coffee, mostly because I was curious. He looked different, more worn down. He told me that when the money stopped, his wife had a breakdown. She had become so dependent on my support that she couldn't function when it disappeared. He said they had to have serious conversations about spending and priorities, conversations they should have had years ago. He apologized for taking me for granted. He said he didn't know what else to say except that he understood if I never wanted to speak to any of them again. He wasn't asking for money. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He just wanted me to know that he got it now. It was the first real apology I had received from anyone. I didn't absolve him or tell him it was okay, because it wasn't. But I appreciated that he came. My mother tried one more time, showing up at my house with my younger sister and the baby. They stood on my porch, the baby bundled in blankets, and my mother asked if we could please talk inside. I stood in the doorway and told them we could talk right there. My sister did most of the talking. She said she had been thinking about the baby's shower, trying to remember what happened. She said she remembered laughing with everyone, but couldn't remember specifically what was said. She said maybe they had been insensitive, but they were just joking around, and I should know they loved me. Should know. That phrase again. I should just know, despite all evidence to the contrary, that they loved me. I told them I didn't doubt they loved me in their own way. I told them I was sure they loved having a brother and son who made their lives easier. But that wasn't the same as actually caring about me as a person. They had never asked about my life, my struggles, my hopes. They had never checked in on me unless they needed something. They loved what I provided, not who I was. My mother started to argue, but my sister stopped her. She looked at me with something that might have been understanding and said maybe I was right. She said she had never thought about it that way. She said she was sorry and she hoped someday I could be part of their lives again. I told her maybe someday, but not now. They left. I still live in the same house. I still work the same job. But I started doing things for myself. I took a trip to Japan, something I had always wanted to do but never spent money on because someone always needed it more. I started investing properly. I joined a gym and actually went. I made friends who knew nothing about my family or my money. People who liked me because we shared interests, not because I could solve their problems. Do I feel guilty? Sometimes. Late at night, When it's quiet, I wonder if I'm the villain in someone else's story. But then I remember standing in that parking lot, feeling like a ghost in my own family, and the guilt fades. They survived without me. They adapted. Maybe that's the real gift I gave them, forcing them to stand on their own feet. Or maybe I'm just rationalizing my choices. Either way, I'm free. And that's worth more than any amount of gratitude they never gave me.